Very good morning to you. Welcome along this Monday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to OTB AM. We're here with you all the way until 9:30 this morning. We're talking football, we're talking rugby, and we're talking GAA after the return of the Allianz football and hurling leagues at the weekend. So plenty for us to sink our teeth into. As ever, if you want to get involved in the conversation, then hit us up on the hashtag OTB AM, or of course you can always get us on Twitter, Facebook, or on YouTube, or whatever stream you're watching this on in the mornings. And for those of you who don't know by now, you can log on to offtheball.com and hit the play or listen button and just treat this like a radio show. You can minimise that in the background, and the audio stream will continue to work. So we've entered the truly digital radio era. How are you?
Very well. Yourself?
Back down from the wilds and up?
Back up, yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to refer to down as south and up as north.
Well, you know, I mean...
Back over.
We're actually spinning, you know that. It's not actually ever down. The globe is turning at all times.
It's true, I guess. You can call me a traditionalist, a flat earther, if you will.
Yeah, well, fair enough. A bit of flat earth football from Kerry yesterday, was there? Or was it old, like, proper new defence of 15 men behind the ball type thing?
Hard to tell. It was definitely a game that suited conditions yesterday from a Kerry standpoint.
I'm not going to ask you to rain on Kerry just yet.
Let's just say that if Kerry implement that style of football for the rest of the year, and once their first game gets broadcast live on terrestrial television playing that way, there will be a few naysayers, no question about it. The thing is, the most important thing for anybody in the county is that Kerry win the All-Ireland. And do they have a better chance of not getting beaten when they shouldn't get beaten by a team like Galway, or falling to a draw like a team against Monaghan like they did last year, and kind of displaying an extremely soft underbelly like they've done at a couple of times over the last couple of years? Then I think there's less chance of that happening on yesterday's evidence. A blanket defence at times, but an incredible intensity in the turnover and extremely good tackling led to winning the game against a pretty woeful Tyrone team.
Missing loads of players? That's mad that Tyrone are woeful at this stage, because they,
So strange. Like, as in, I think it's woeful on yesterday's evidence, but I don't think they're in a woeful position. I think they're actually in quite a good position. I think after the McKenna Cup and some of the players they brought back into the panel, they're going to be absolutely fine. And like I was saying at the start of the year, that I don't expect Tyrone to get back to an All-Ireland final, and then the McKenna Cup maybe kind of reevaluate that opinion a little bit. But yesterday they looked pretty abject, and even when the likes of Kyle Coney came on yesterday, you're like, what is the actual role here? What is the point of what he's doing? Like, get him more involved, get him closer to goal potentially.
Where did he come on?
Centre forward, I want to say. Half forward, roaming around, hand passed the ball quite a lot, to be fair. Kerry hand passed the ball quite a lot, and when you look at yesterday's evidence, you do wonder why the new hand pass rule was ever ditched, because it would have been nice to see if that would have had an impact on yesterday's game, and maybe it wouldn't, but I would say certainly a fairly poor affair yesterday. But I don't think Peter Keane minds too much. I think he'd be quietly satisfied with a plan that was executed quite well. At times, more men behind the ball than Tyrone, so I'm not blaming Tyrone for the drab affair at all yesterday.
Good crowd, good atmosphere?
Biggest crowd of the weekend at any of the Allianz League games. Almost 13,000 people in Killarney. The worst fans in the country, apparently.
Who called them the worst fans in the country?
Most people.
Who did? Who called them the worst fans in the country?
I would say you've probably said that
Never
phrase.
once in my life. I would say Paulie did. After that, I've never heard anybody else call the Kerry fans the worst fans in the country. You call the Mayo fans the worst fans in the country on a fairly regular basis, and they're the ones who travel in the biggest numbers.
Yeah, I'm not saying not dedicated, when I refer to them as the worst fans in the country. That's a different situation altogether. More to do with personality. That's a joke. No, like 13,000 people for an Allianz League game is a good turnout, and also for a terrible day out there. I think there's kind of a sense that yesterday was actually the start of a new era, whereas over the last couple of years there has been a sense that, is this the start of something new? So the last year I think there was a lot of young players brought in, and then this year is going to be second season time for a lot of them. Like Clifford is without question the outlier when it comes to nationwide football, of being a man who can come into a team and play unbelievably in his first year, much like Conor Callaghan as well. They're the two players that kind of have brilliant first years, but usually it is the second year, isn't it, when it comes to inter-county football? I think someone like Sean O'Shea is going to prove that theory quite a lot this year.
Great photograph of him scoring a point from the sideline.
A proper Morris Fit style, yeah. That was the game. That was the point that really put the nail in the Tyrone coffin yesterday. He was brilliant, and Darren Moynihan as well on his league debut for Kerry, particularly impressive.
Where's he playing? What's he playing?
Wing forward. Well, corner forward he's listed as in the match reports today. But as I say, everybody was behind the ball. He was part of the counter-attacking game plan. Once Kerry turned over the ball, get it to Darren Moynihan or get it to Jonathan Lyne. But it was mostly Moynihan. He kicked 2 scores from play in the first half, and then he just run himself to the ground. So he was pretty ineffectual in the second half, but very, very encouraging signs from him. I think Kerry fans will have come away from yesterday quietly confident with where they're at, because they've won ugly and they're not going to be as pretty as they used to be to watch, but that might be a more effective game plan.
I mean, they ground league wins out quite a lot.
Yeah, they have done, but yesterday felt different. Yesterday definitely felt different. It didn't feel like this was sort of a horses for courses type approach. It felt that this was a plan that they are going to implement at times later in the summer.
Okay, and that plan is to be ultra defensive, be able to break at speed when you have good forwards.
When they need to be, yeah. Like the thing is, when they have David Clifford and James O'Donoghue back in the team alongside Paul Ganey, then they might realise that that's actually what they need to be focusing on. And missing, Paul Ganey wasn't up to speed at all yesterday, so they're basically missing their entire full forward line. So maybe they just played with what they've got. So maybe it was a horses for courses attitude. I just feel that they're onto something now, that their tackling was so good that a counter-attacking style of play might not be the worst course of action.
You think they're going to win the All-Ireland? That's what I'm hearing from you. That's what, like, this is the level of confidence that I'm surprised that you're going public with so early. Normally it'd be Era, sure, Tyrone, it was a long journey for them, the weather was bad, wouldn't read too much into it, but you're like, balls out. That's what we're doing.
Well, I think we need to realise that there was a lot of false promise. A lot of false information we got last year with regards to who actually is the second or third best team in the country. Half the reason why Dublin won their easiest All-Ireland ever was because of the opposition they played in the semi-final and the final, the All-Ireland final. And that's no disrespect to Galway and Tyrone.
And so
it just is that Kerry and Mayo are the second and third best team in the country.
And where were they? Where were they? How can they didn't actually achieve what they're supposed to achieve? You can't.
Yes.
You don't get credit. You don't get a year off.
No, I know you don't. They bottled things last year. Like, to judge things on the fact that, on one season, especially in championship football, when one game can decide an entire summer, you had one poor season. Like, referring to Mayo as being a qualifiers team because of last season is an absolute nonsense. Like, Mayo are a top 3 team, Kerry are a top 3 team. They
weren't last year. And
Mayo and Kerry are the only teams that will stop the 5 in a row.
What's wrong with Monaghan? Why can't they get better?
Well, this is the thing. Monaghan did this exact thing last year, though, and the last time they played Dublin in Clonus, they should have beaten them as well. Jack McCaffrey, I think, scored the last second goal. Monaghan like playing Dublin in the National League. Do they have enough firepower off the bench has always been the question with regards to Monaghan. And
maybe now.
It's an easy thing. Maybe they do now. Like O'Hanlon yesterday has been a brilliant addition. Like Jack McCarran has been waiting for a breakout season, has been unlucky. A couple of knocks, I think, over the last couple of years. If he gets firing on the hard ground in the summer, they're going to be something to be reckoned with, because they always have Conor McManus there. Like, Monaghan are an outstanding team. It's a weird one. Of all the last 4 teams that made it last year, I would have actually picked Monaghan ahead of Galway and Tyrone to perhaps give Dublin some sort of rattle in an All-Ireland final, but they never got that opportunity. Yeah,
okay, fair enough. Let's tell you what's coming up. We're going to talk about what's in the sport pages this morning. Giant killings. Are they real giant killings in the FA Cup? Do teams still care, obviously? Does anybody still care about the FA Cup, really? Even when a giant... Don't the giant killings actually make the competition crapper as it goes on? Isn't that one of the problems that, like, teams like Burton reach the semi-final of the League Cup and lose the game 9-0, and it's like, that was a real waste of a potential Man City versus Man United, Man City versus Liverpool game.
It's kind of funny.
What?
It's kind of funny.
Football's back. We'll talk about that in some more detail around about 8:30. We're going to do hurling for you tomorrow, so don't worry, hurling people, we're coming for you. Around about 8:35, Darren's going to come in and complain about the refereeing in the Dublin-Monaghan game, I suspect, judging from his Twitter feed yesterday. And Peter Stringer is going to join us in studio around about 9:05. So before all that, here is the Dubs boss, Jim Gavin, giving us his take on the new rules in Gaelic football after his side's defeat to Monaghan and Clonus.
Yeah, I'd no particular issue with it. First and foremost, I think it needs to be remarked that and acknowledge the endeavours of the Rules Committee, the hard work that they put in, and the time and effort that they have volunteered their time to try and make the game better. If there was one thing you'd probably comment upon it, is that I think there hasn't been from them, or indeed our leadership of the GAA, a real clear vision of what they want Gaelic football to be. And I think until we understand what that is, we'll get this what's going on at the moment, lots of actions without a vision. That's a little bit of a nightmare. So, from Dublin's perspective, I articulate my thoughts to the county board, and I don't believe managers should have a soapbox to comment on them rightly or wrongly. It's up for our own local county boards to make representations on behalf of the county, not on behalf of one particular team. So I'd no particular issue with it, and whatever our governing body say in terms of rules, we just got on with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He doesn't want managers to have a soapbox. All the other managers are dying to use their soapbox.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm kind of going to project my own opinion onto what Jim Gavin's actually saying there, but I'm not sure that that's what he really kind of thinks. I think what he means is that they shouldn't have as much of an influence over the way the GAA at the top brass actually make decisions, which again is certainly something I feel quite strongly about, and I agree with him if that's what he's trying to say. I'm not sure does he necessarily mean that they shouldn't have a platform at any point. I think it is important to hear what the managers think. I do think that what the managers thought was factored in way too much into the discussion around the playing rules, because ultimately this is a thing, and let's just make it perfectly clear here, it was inter-county managers. If the playing rules were to get full support and come to their final conclusion, which would have been at all GAA games between all teams, which includes club teams, then really the view of the inter-county manager shouldn't be factored into it too much, and they've got their own vested interests. So I think Jim Gavin's right if he's trying to say that the views of the inter-county managers were taken on board a little bit too much, because they were.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's always going to be the case, because they're the ones who, when they say stuff, it makes the news because they're inter-county managers and they almost never say stuff.
Well, that's true, and that's why Jim Gavin's on the back pages of most of the papers this morning, because he's gone out and said this. It would be interesting to see what would have happened if Jim Gavin was actually Dublin manager during the O'Byrne Cup, because he would have been quizzed on this stuff during the O'Byrne Cup, and maybe he would have supported the rule changes. And that might have actually factored in the Central Council decision in a different way. But we'll never know on that situation. The reason why he's being asked about it now is because it was the first time he's been in front of the media since the rule changes have been brought in and subsequently ditched. Sorry, not the rule changes, the rule change to the hand pass rule.
Yeah, all right. Let's bring in the newspapers this morning. Going to start with the Irish Independent here. And so the Irish Independent leads Dublin brought down to earth. And Colm Keys, Monaghan make their mark with timely bench press. Eamon Sweeney, Farney have given Gavin's rivals reason to hope. Also, we haven't talked about this just yet, but on the top there, cup wins are for egos, says Pochettino after second painful defeat. And then John Kiley, we won't be holding back. Limerick off to a flyer with Wexford Park victory. And then taking down England's Giants is the story from Rory O'Connor as Six Nations build-up week starts. The Herald Sport Con dubbed out. Questions mounting over Darren's future is the back page headline on the Herald over Frank Roach's story. On the front, Connolly can come back is the Herald's front page story. So from page 1 all the way through to page 56, there's been a change. He could go, no. Ah! Oh, no. Ah! No.
Well, there's doubts about him, but he can come back. I think both of those things can coexist. He was quite diplomatic in his answering.
Well, I didn't understand it. It's like...
vague and diplomatic aren't too dissimilar, I guess.
No, exactly. It's like, I'm going to keep talking here, it's going to filibuster this out. Well, football is a game. It's, 15 aside, the referee throws the ball in. Generally played on a Sunday, sometimes on Saturday evening. Bank holiday Monday used to be a great day for us. Connolly, yes, good player. Yeah, great player. Keep going. All right, time's up. Off we go. And that's it. That's how it works.
I do wonder what it is, what he's actually thinking. It does seem to me that it's becoming increasingly apparent that maybe Diarmuid Connolly just doesn't want to play with Dublin this year. Maybe that's just the case, and maybe he's come home and he's like, yep, I've had my bit. I'm happy enough with my lot.
He was asked about Connolly. It's like any player who volunteers their time for playing inter-county football. Those choices that they make are purely those choices. And if players want to come back, we'll be delighted to have them. Does that mean you can just rock up to training? How you doing? I'm going to come. Could we go? Well, what happened if we rocked up to training?
Probably get a game.
We get some gear at least. I mean, we get the head pucked off us in the game, obviously.
They just got beaten by Monaghan. I think you'd get a game.
Asked if this meant he didn't want to come back, the Does Boss countered, no, that's not what I said. So.
What did you say, Jim?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that avenue actually pursued into actually getting clarity. I presume, as you say, there might have actually been a 9 or 10 minutes of time actually having passed with those quotes, and then it was like, sorry, time to go, that's all you're getting from me today. I don't know, when is this going to rumble on until?
I'd say until the All-Ireland final, right? No, the championship squad will be named, and that'll be the end of it. That'll be like because there's no point. You can't come back. No one's ever come back in a season.
Yeah, there's every chance it becomes a big story later on in the summer, especially if Dublin get beaten early on. And when I mean early on, I mean in the Super 8s, because they're on the same side of the draw as the Connacht champions. There's every chance Mayo beat Dublin in the Super 8s, and then we go into a frenzy about how Dublin actually get this act back together to try and go from a second seed back to All-Ireland champions and winning 5 in a row. And Connolly could be the perfect tonic. So you're probably right. This is going to be a media story that rumbles on for months and months and months. But maybe Connolly's just sitting at home saying, I just don't want to play football for Dublin anymore. It is a huge commitment of your time. And he's seen with his travels last year that there's maybe more to life than winning an All-Ireland here in Ireland. But I guess if you're a top-class athlete and have the potential to go and be part of a 5-in-a-row winning team, that is also a fairly attractive option.
Yeah, because it's going to last forever. Dublin are down to the back page on the Times Ireland edition, and players are shocked by Lennon ban. This is a story about Neil Lennon, who's been suspended. Speaking after the 3-1 win against St Mirren yesterday, when Eddie May and Grant Murray were in temporary charge, Gray said the players' relationship with Lennon had been no different from usual last week. There was nothing untoward about the squad meeting on Friday when Lennon is alleged to have had an altercation with Flo Camberry, and that he knew nothing of the suspension until he heard the news on TV. So Neil Lennon had been suspended for an alleged altercation with one of the players. So and then that's Michael Darren McCauley falling over. There was an interesting moment where Michael Darren McCauley was off for a blood sub. His replacement gets sin-binned, and they tried to bring Michael Darren McCauley back on straight away because he was just off for a blood sub. And so he should have been okay to come back on, but in that case, can you nominate somebody else to come off? Or is it?
Good point.
Do you get to pick?
I haven't looked into the nitty-gritty of the sin bin rule.
Say you're not Dublin, but some other team that has a superstar player who goes off, and his replacement, you're like, no, I'm not spending 10 minutes, because that's not fair, right?
Well, it is the person who is your substitute for the blood sub rule, so I guess it just transfers onto that person. It has to, really, doesn't it?
Well, I don't want to name names or counties, but say David Clifford is off for a blood sub, and a sub comes on and he gets sin-binned, and Clifford has to spend 9 minutes in the bin because a rash of blood to the head. You're going to pick somebody else, right?
No, it's tough luck. The man who got subbed off for the blood sub, who subsequently got black carded, has to stay off. It just makes sense. It's a less complicated rule as well. Referees have too much to do, Ger.
It is definitely less complicated, and I'm not sure I agree with it. It's how it should work. Palace pile on pain for Spurs, so Palace beat Spurs 2-0. Andros Townsend refused to celebrate. Got a lot of crap on Twitter for it, and then answered back with, I was at that club for 16 years. I'm going to show them some respect. They made me into the man I am. It's fair enough.
Yeah, he clearly wasn't watching Alexis Sanchez on Friday night, who went and was like, nah, I'm going to celebrate. And fair play to him. I guess when you get booed by the opposition fans, it makes things a little bit easier to do in terms of actually celebrating against them.
Did they make him into the player he was? They did not.
No, Barcelona did, for sure.
Ticket prices hit record highs for home games. This is a story on the front of the Irish Times. Category 1 tickets priced at 115 quid for fixtures against England and France. Presume we knew that though, right? These ticket prices?
I'm not sure. I haven't gone on to the website.
Sold out for months. Prices for England and France games: premium 150 quid, category 1 115, category 2 105, category 3 85, category 4 is 65. Category 4 like sitting behind the goals.
Presumably, yeah. It's not as outrageous as I thought it would be. It's kind of like so the best ticket you can possibly buy as an average punter is €115.
Unless you can get premium for 150.
150. Seems about right to me. Like, I can understand it, it's record prices, but that's kind of what you expect to go see. Again, with Test Rugby these days, unfortunately, isn't it? It's big prices. You're paying big money to go and see it. To
pay the professional wages of the people who are playing the sport. That's what you're doing. That's how that organisation raises its money.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it's like an acceptable number or anything like that. It's just, like, as I say, I haven't even gone on to even check the ticket prices. Because
do you not have double standards here because you're not raining fire down on the rugby fraternity that you rained last week on the GAA?
Did I rain fire on the GAA fraternity? As I say, I didn't even go on to even check these prices because I just naturally assumed I'd be priced out of it. And, it is a professional organisation. I'm not sure does well, I guess to a certain extent the IRFU should also be promoting the values of the amateur game as well, right? But like, you know, the IRFU and the GAA aren't too dissimilar when it comes to their ethos in terms of promoting sport within communities. So maybe we should hold them to the same standard.
I have a tab of the morning for you. Sean of a new Kerry era, and that's the great picture for Sean O'Shea's point. It's actually quite far out there. I thought it was in the 21, but...
No, it's just around the 45.
Wow. And the pitch isn't like summer pitch, it's kind of, you know...
No, Niall Morgan shanked a lot of efforts yesterday.
Did he?
Yeah.
And the Kerry lads were like, oh, that's okay, fair play, don't worry, Niall. You'll be grand the next time. We're like, whoa! Which one was it on? What were you doing?
Kerry fans don't do sarcastic cheers, so it was all respect.
And then my favourite headline of the day, Davy leasing his Wex appeal, is the headline over Ger and Eoin, who is like, just can't wait to get digging in it. He's been all winter long. Who was Ger and Eoin? You know, now Davy's back. Great.
Well, I think the keyboard was probably already done and dusted before the Wexford game. It was like that column written, wait for the first Wexford loss. What's he saying?
Clare and Wexford are the only top tier teams still playing with a sweeper now that the tactical genius that is Derek McGrath has retired. No.
Does he put tactical genius in inverted commas?
No, he doesn't, but like, I think it's implied. No team has won a trophy in summer hurling using the system since 2013. I mean, 2013 is not that long ago, really. But anyway, sorry, I'm just trying to find some more of... okay. I'm going to keep going with this because it's good. Clare that year were the only side to lift silverware after using this style of play, but they didn't beat either of the two best teams in the country at the time, Tip and Kilkenny. In effect, what the managers of Clare and Wexford are saying to their players, as McGrath with Waterford, is you're not good enough for inter-county hurling. The spin is that if you follow their master plans, they're so ingenious, only those with an Einstein-esque brain or prize-winning journalists can understand them, then people can be fooled for long enough to almost win games. Jargon and bluster are used to intimidate any critics. It's a con job, of course. Worse than that, it's a blight in the game and it's turning supporters off. That's class. That's what you want from your columnist. That's the first, 200 words.
Is this, actually true that there's only two teams left playing sweeper in Clare and Wexford? They've done so relatively successfully. And the Clare sweeper role almost worked a treat for Clare against Galway in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. In fact, that was the Galway started that game extremely well, as far as I recall, and they'd gone a few points up early on, and then they started playing a sweeper Clare, and it changed the entire scope of the game, and it ended up going to extra time. So I think from a sweeper perspective, it's still very much on vogue, and it's still a very much effective part of modern hurling.
Look, styles make fights, right?
Well, exactly. I'm going to move on to the Sun this morning. Back page says, finishing in top four means more. Cup wins FA use, says Ben Hunt. Mauricio Pochettino suffered a cup knockout last night. Says basically that all that matters is a top four trophy and winning cups are for egos. The back page of the Irish Daily Star is Clonagh Cyclone, Gavin's GAA blast after opening league defeat. Mick is keen on Will, says Paul Lennon. Will Keane could be named the Mick McCarthy squad for the March Euro 2020 qualifier against Gibraltar. You got the Mauricio Pochettino story there as well. And good news for Manchester United fans this morning. Neymar certain to miss Manchester United tie. So PSG's Neymar is set to miss the first leg of their Champions League clash. He suffered a metatarsal injury in the French Cup win over Strasbourg in midweek, going off in tears. Imagine that.
Is he broken? I mean,
he cannot put weight in his right foot, and it's told he has no chance of making the first leg. It is believed he could be forced to undergo surgery. It seems that way.
Here's the thing. Is there a potential Ewing theory situation where Mbappe takes over and just kills everybody on his own?
Potentially, but have you seen a Ewing situation with PSG before?
No, with Neymar. People like Neymar who are like, oh, give me the ball, I need to have the ball, I need to take this free kick, I need to do this. I need to do my tricks, I need to do the things that sell all the jerseys. Whereas, best for the team is probably not him and Mbappe, is it? Well,
we'll see. As I say, we haven't really got a big sample size. PSG rightly get judged in the Champions League because the French league is such a joke at the moment that they just walk it. So any games that we see Mbappe leading the line on his own on the right wing, say for example, without Neymar on the other flank, that's when you can get a judge in this. And maybe that is the first leg against Manchester United, and maybe they will be better. Maybe they will be a more effective team. I doubt it though. I know you're a kind of a big Neymar basher, but I think his particular set of skills are too extraordinary to be ignored.
I mean, you're guaranteeing a win for Man United now that he's gone, basically.
Well, you could guarantee a win for Manchester United at the moment based on their own current form, really. Like the babyface assassin can do no wrong. The back page of the Mirror is no con job. Dublin return for Connolly unlikely as champions lose opener in Clonus. The back page of the Herald then is con dubbed out. Questions mounting over Diarmuid's future. And then a couple of the UK back pages. The Guardian leads with top 4 not cups. Pochettino defends elimination and says trophies build egos. And the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is winning a trophy only builds egos. Pochettino says top 4 finish trumps cup glory as Spurs crash out after Trippier's penalty miss. What would you rather, top 4 or an FA Cup if you're a Tottenham fan?
Top 4.
Easily. It's not even a question. And people used to take the piss out of Arsenal before for winning the top 4 trophy when they've gone for ages without winning a cup, and then they won back-to-back FA Cups and crashed out of the top 4. And now it's way worse.
And he got sacked for that, really.
Really, yeah.
Like, it didn't look like it was a nailed-on thing that they were going to finish in the top 4 where it did every other year. It was like, Arsenal have done really good things in this club, but time to go, buddy.
Even the idea of the kind of dust-gathering trophy cabinet seems like a rather archaic mockery of a team at the moment. As in, if you're like, oh yeah, but what trophies have you won? Almost kind of seems like a stupid argument, because it's quite often thrown against Jurgen Klopp as well. And what would Liverpool fans rather? Even if they didn't win the Premier League, go toe-to-toe with Manchester City right the way to the line in an actual title race, or win the FA Cup? I would say even losing a Premier League title race and is a better situation than winning the FA Cup. We'll
talk about all the major talking points from the GAA weekend a little bit later on, including the Mayo Roscommon game, which was played in a gale and was as tempestuous on the field in terms of the relationship between the two sets of players as it was in weather terms. Donny Smith is the person who's come up for most significant criticism. His hand makes contact with the eye area of Keith Higgins. Keith Higgins responds, and Donny Smith goes down like a sack of spuds. It'll be interesting to see what happens from this. Like, I don't know if the rule book in the GAA is equipped to deal with this in as broad a way as it is in some other sports.
I don't think it is. Have we seen suspensions for this sort of thing before? Philly McMahon get a 1-game ban?
1-game ban.
So it would suggest to me that the rule book is most certainly not equipped to deal with this. Whatever Philly McMahon did, Cork Park deemed it to be wrong enough for a suspension to be handed down. Now, for me, the only thing that he could have done wrong is a potential eye gouge. So GAA chiefs thought that Philly McMahon eye gouged an opposition player.
Do you think that...
and he got a 1-game ban for that. So that would suggest to me that the rule book is not equipped.
Yeah, does a gouge have to be like you poke and have a good root around, or is a scrape, I think any contact should now be considered a gouge, but like...
Deliberate contact to the eye.
Gouge suggests kind of like a bit of penetration.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we need to have a conversation about that, because you're going to start seeing it. You see it a lot. You've seen it loads of times where, I'm not very good at my hands. I'm just a Gaelic footballer playing at inter-county elite level. Oh, I accidentally put my hand on your face. Oh, look, I've swiped my glove across your eye. You've got such big bug eyes, don't you?
Yeah.
You just close your eyes there.
It's great that this game was on national television, or on television at least, that it was covered and that the moment was circulated around social media, because there definitely is a sort of comfort blanket of the fact that nobody's going to see it, particularly when it comes to Club GAA, that if there is some sort of swift and decisive action about this, it might actually help. And the fact that people have seen it, you can't really say, well, this sort of stuff doesn't happen in our game. I think...
Here's one thing. It almost seems as if as much of the outcry is about the fact that he took a dive when Keith Higgins reacted.
Very true, very true.
That's not manly. Can't do that. Whereas, did he not? I'm not sure. What happened with the... Maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
What's the more egregious crime here? What's more egregious alleged crime here?
Yeah, let's have that conversation open and honestly and be transparent about it. Right, up next we're going to talk football with Sam Diss from Mundial. First, here is the highlight of West Ham's fans weekend. It's Mark Arnautovic and his special message for them. Have a look.
Hey West Ham fans, finally you hear me talking. I'm back. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy for my decisions, what I made. I'm very happy. I can't wait to play again in front of you guys because for myself, I love to play in the London Stadium. I love to play in front of you guys. I love to play, especially to play with my teammates. I will be back on Tuesday, Wolverhampton away, and I will give everything for you guys. So listen what this club or myself are saying. Don't listen to the other people who are not with the club, okay? All the best. See you soon. Bye.
So that's Marko Arnautovic saying, don't listen to his brother, who was saying that he was, his agent of course, he was actually, you know, wasn't agitating for a move away to China. And he's definitely committed to at least spending the next 5 months at West Ham. It's a long-term deal that they've managed to secure themselves there. Sam Diss is a writer and editor at Mundial magazine. Sam, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, how's it going?
Am I right to say you're also a West Ham fan? Is that correct?
Yes, unfortunately I am.
Okay, I don't mean to rub salt in the wounds, but was that the highlight of West Ham fans weekend? Marko Arnautovic saying, don't listen to anybody but me and the club.
It was a bit of a weird one because obviously the timing of it happened about 15 minutes after we had quite a bad loss that you may have read about or watched, and I mean you just listen to it there. The air of the statement that he made was a bit almost like he was being held at gunpoint in front of a plain wall. Everything is fine. They're treating me well, but like. To be honest, you'd rather just a player just get out of the club if they don't want to be there, if they're not there for the right reasons. I mean, personally, for him, I completely understand if he does want to go and take the money, but just go. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those. So I'd say it was a small victory for West Ham fans, but doesn't really make up for the larger, more crucial loss that happened about 15 minutes previous.
Was it also a victory for manager power and a lack of player power? Those who go against the idea that maybe Jose Mourinho was victim of a heave in the Manchester United dressing room, or that Antonio Conte was previously a victim of a heave in the Chelsea dressing room, and Manuel Pellegrini and Maurizio Sarri over the last week have been the two managers who've come down hard on players. Pellegrini actually acted with a fairly heavy hand with Marko Arnautovic here, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, you say it worked, but obviously you don't really understand them, or I don't, no one does, understands the machinations behind why these moves or why these deals actually happen, whether or not it's him or whether or not it's someone quickly getting on the blower, being Marko, we're in trouble. I don't know if you've got the telly on, but we're in a bit of a sticky situation, is whatever you were asking for. But, I mean, it was refreshing that Pellegrini came out and I mean, although he didn't answer questions about Arnautovic straight after the game, presumably because he probably didn't know a whole lot about it. I mean, he would have still been pretty much in the dugout when the conversation was being finalised. But it was quite refreshing to see someone come out and sort of say, no one's bigger than this club. I mean, West Ham, I mean, by all rights, as much as I'd love to think of us as one of the top teams in the country, we aren't. We're sort of like a mid-table team. But it's quite refreshing that manager power and club power is at least on the surface still in effect.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened in the game itself, the specifics of how a team as talented and you know, self-assured as West Ham are supposed to be at the moment can actually end up being whooped in the Cup? Yeah,
I mean, loath as I am to agree with someone like Wally Downs, who probably represents quite an old school version of football that we'd like to say doesn't really count anymore. It was as simple as them wanting it more. Them all over the pitch to a man, challenging every tackle like it was a cup final in the way that we're all taught as kids and that we've all been taught as adults. It no longer exists anymore. I think probably the best way to think about the FA Cup for me, or the way that I rationalise it to myself, is like, say the Premier League is about the biggest TV show in the world. The FA Cup, every single game is its own little film. And if you're not fully committed for the entirety of that 90 minutes or plus 90 minutes, you're going to get beaten by a team who just simply wants it more. And it's quite refreshing, I suppose, in terms of like the actual cup itself. But on the day, it was just, I mean, the first 45 minutes was as bad as I've ever seen us play. Wimbledon were brilliant all over the pitch. We looked like the team that were bottom of League One, which is embarrassing. We didn't start with a particularly weak team, although players like Felipe Anderson were on the bench, who obviously is a fantastic player, and if things changed when he did come on. But we didn't have any cut through. didn't look like we really cared. We didn't test their goalkeeper at all, which is surely the bare minimum, apart from a Chicharito chance that hit the post, I think, within the first few minutes. It was just better all over the pitch. The goals were going in straight in front of me. I was actually in the stands rather than in the press box when I was covering it. And I've got to say, I mean, I was hard pushed to not feel quite chuffed for the team and for fans who it clearly meant so much to, because it just looked like no one at West Ham cared.
You say you were happy for Wimbledon. Did it make you less happy when you looked at Wally Downs' quote saying that he was watching Match of the Day and we just couldn't stop laughing? We weren't analysing it. We were just laughing like silly.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen those quotes, so they're sprung on me now. But look, I mean, I don't blame him whatsoever. He'd have come into this. I mean, I was interviewing people at the club maybe half an hour before kickoff, and they were generally resigned to a loss. The best that they could hope for was to not be embarrassed on live TV. So I'm really not surprised that he is shocked or laughing about the fact that they beat a team on paper so much better than them comfortably. To score 4 goals against Premier League opposition when you're the bottom of League One is laughable. And I think that from West Ham perspective, you can't hold any grudges against Wally Downs, though I might try to.
Right. The other thing just on Wally Downs, just kind of reading a couple of interviews with him in the build-up to last Saturday, he says that Vinnie Jones was giving him a couple of tips on, how to manage a football team. Does it make it easier to take that Vinnie Jones had a part to play potentially in this Wimbledon result?
I mean, who am I to question the football credibilities of someone like Vinnie Jones? I mean, I loved him in X-Men Last Stand, Gone in 60 Seconds, both great films. I think that there's probably a reason why his managerial career didn't really work out. And I think Wally Downs probably says as much in the after. I think it's actually in the pre-match where he was just basically, someone asked him tactics of how to beat a Premier League team, and he was basically just picking out centre midfielders to go and rough up early doors. But to be fair to him, it worked. I mean, you can't hold any grudges against Wimbledon. They fully deserved it. I mean, Vinnie Jones, I mean, I'll be very happy to see the back of him. I mean, I'm sure he's on the plane back to LAX now. But you know what? Fair play to him. I mean, it's the first time that Vinnie Jones has actually been to see AFC play since 2002. So, I mean, he's had a lot of time to sort of get all of his ducks in a row and work out how to beat teams, because he's certainly not been going to matches.
But was the game referred to as the Hollywood Derby, Vinnie Jones versus Danny Dyer?
It wasn't in my circles, no. But you know what? I mean, I'm sure Danny Dyer's woke up to plenty of text messages from assorted Wimbledon-affiliated D-list celebs, and I can only say probably deserves it. I mean, even Danny Dyer couldn't hold a grudge against Wimbledon right now.
I did want to ask you about one thing that Arnautovic said about how much he enjoys playing at the London Stadium. So we're Premier League rights holders here. We send commentary teams to every game in the Premier League, and everybody comes back from the London Stadium going, this is not a good stadium to watch football in. I can only presume that's just a lie that Arnautovic is telling, that the players can't actually enjoy playing there, can they?
I mean, if I was being paid to go there every week rather than paying to go there every week, yeah, I'm sure I'd love going to the London Stadium as well. But it's one of those where it feels a little bit like you're stuck in a terminal at Heathrow and someone's just put a load of grass in the middle of it. Yeah, it's absolutely. It's just a very weird situation to watch football in. Mostly because it's not a football stadium. It's a lovely athletic stadium, and events. I mean, people assure me that they're very good to watch there. But considering the majority of the events that I've seen there are West Ham playing not very well, maybe my view of it is quite tarnished. But I mean, you could go on about sightlines, and you could go on about the ease of which you can get into the stadiums, which is something that the our chairman are quite happy to point out. But I mean, from an actual fan point of view, it's not very fun to watch. From a player point of view, I can't imagine it's very fun either. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. So a cup run for a team like West Ham, Pochettino's in the papers today saying cups are for egos, top four is all that matters. And I can see how, if you're a West Ham fan, when you're stuck at the moment in this perpetual era of the team is maybe actually going through a bad patch. It might be relegation candidates. We're not going to get relegated because we're too good. Team goes through a good run of form. It's like, oh, maybe we might be able to make a run for Europe, and then it never makes that run for Europe because the squad just isn't good enough. You're kind of stuck in this no man's land. A cup run would have been a nice distraction, surely.
It certainly would have been a nice thing to have. I mean, we've only really had one in my recent memory when we lost in the final against Liverpool, which I won't talk about. Obviously, a very painful memory. But it's one of those. I mean, when we aren't really competing for anything. I mean, Tottenham have other things to play for. They're playing for Champions League football. They're paying for a huge financial reward. So you can understand that, especially with them paying off a stadium. We've got a stadium that we've got for dirt cheap, and we're in the league, as you say, where we're probably not going to go down, touching wood. I mean, we're certainly not going to challenge for Europe anytime soon. So it would have been nice for the team to actually look like they had a little bit of ambition this year. But to be honest, I don't really put that down to Pellegrini. I think that's maybe something that's just been inculcated into the squads over a number of years. I mean, it certainly has in my recent memory. West Ham have always been one of those teams where there'd be sort of a bet ruiner. So you could never tell which West Ham team are going to turn up. We could beat, as we have done, beat Arsenal 2-0 or we'll lose to Burnley 2-0. I mean, it's one of those where you kind of are resigned to the fact that you're not really going to win anything. And it would have been nice to challenge a little bit. I'd have loved a little quarter-final, maybe a semis, a little trip out to Wembley. But unfortunately, another year goes by and another chance goes begging.
Yeah, no, for sure. What did you make of what Pochettino was saying then? So you don't have any problems with it if you're talking about the financial opportunity that Spurs have for finishing the top four?
It's a tough one because they've got a team that should be challenging for silverware, whether that's cups or maybe just short on the league. They're probably a few signings away from that. I think that I can understand why fans would be annoyed because it does smack of sort of pessimism, sort of like a bit of just settling for where they are. Or maybe it could be sort of excuses made. I know a lot of people have been digging them out about Spursism and bottling. But to be honest, I think that they're in a very tough situation financially. We don't want to talk about it in those sort of terms, but they haven't got the money to invest in a team that will take them to fight on all fronts. And so to be fair to Pochettino, I mean, like, you'd be hard pushed to find anyone who doesn't think he's one of the best managers in the league. He's doing what he can, I think. So, I mean, I can't fault him too much. I think that he could probably have couched it in better ways. I think that could possibly come down to something being lost in translation. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you've got no money and your squad needs improving, what are you supposed to do?
Do you think from a Maurizio Pochettino perspective that the frustration may actually spill into a level where it actually dictates what he might do with his own career? Because it seemed to me that, say, a month ago when Jose Mourinho got sacked, Maurizio Pochettino was obviously the front runner for the job, and he was in such a great position where he had a bit of leverage, where Manchester United desperately wanted him and were probably going to pay big money to get him, because Solskjaer wasn't supposed to work out. But Solskjaer is working out so beautifully at the moment that maybe they'll actually look at Maurizio Pochettino's situation and Daniel Levy's staunchness at the head of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club as an inconvenience and say to themselves, well, we can't be bothered with the hassle of Maurizio Pochettino, which in his position, if he's a man of ambition and wants to manage Manchester United, is not ideal.
No, it's not. But you know what? I think if you look at people in football, you look at people who know football, be that journalists up to the people who run these clubs, I think that everyone understands that Pochettino is a fantastic manager, regardless of form, regardless of the bad luck that they're having, or Tottenham are having off the pitch, which is unfortunately impacted on the pitch. But I think it's one of those where you can see the frustration building in him, and I mean, he's only human. As much as these people do get paid, it's always important to remember that they are human and they do get stressed out, and he probably had plenty of sleepless nights over the fact that he has an extremely high-profile job where his hands seem quite tied. It wouldn't surprise me if in the next season or two, if they don't win any cups and if he isn't given money to improve the team, that he would move on. And I think that, I don't want to say that Man United should get rid of Solskjaer by any stretch of the imagination, because I think that to come into a team that was such a poisoned well as what Mourinho left it, and to do well and to win this string of games and to win now against some good teams, Arsenal as well on Friday, I think that you can't say that it's just luck. But, I mean, obviously Pochettino would, you'd imagine, be an improvement. But I think even for him, I think he could probably do with a little bit less stress right now. And there's probably not a more stressful job in world football than the Man United's job at the moment. So I think that, I mean, if your only stresses are to have quite a good team, probably the third best team in the league, I'd say, and to be there or thereabouts every single season, that's probably less stressful than being in the Man United hot seat. So I think if I was Pochettino, I'd put my feet up a bit.
Yeah, quick question about Declan Rice. There'd been enough chatter at the end of December to make it look like there was a possibility somebody would come in with an offer this January and maybe tempt the owners to cash in immediately. But presumably they've got no intention of cashing in on Declan Rice until he's worth 200 million. I mean,
I'd love it if he was worth 200 million, and I'd be chuffed for Declan as well. But I mean, if you look at our team, the fact that, I mean, I'd probably say Felipe Anderson is our best player. And to have a 19-year-old in Declan Rice, who's as good as he is and as comfortable as he is, to be our second best player, one of our most effective players, certainly. And he's certainly been so consistent as well. I mean, like, I think it was so important that they managed to lock him up into a longer-term deal. Obviously, that doesn't really mean anything in today's football, but he's just fantastic. Like, it's a joy to watch him play. And you so rarely get to say that about defensive midfielders. And I know he sort of sees himself as a centre-half. I think that people are coming to terms with the fact that he's probably one of the best young defensive midfielders in Europe right now. And I make no bones about saying that. And I think that he could very easily walk into a better team. And I told him no grudges if he decided that he wanted to do that and he wanted to progress his career in that sort of way. Internationally, I don't really know what he's going to do, obviously. But I just hope for continued success for someone who is going about football in the right way, who has never let the contract disputes really get in the way of his football, apart from the fact of just going out there and performing better and better each week, which is obviously the best impetus to get more money, if that's what you want. I mean, he's been fantastic, just a genuine breath of fresh air in that team. And I think if he was playing against Wimbledon, I genuinely don't think that would have happened on Saturday night. And I think Pedro Obiang is going to get a lot of stick, especially for being at fault for one of the goals. But I think it comes down to the fact that the leadership and consistency and quality of Declan Rice just cannot be understated anymore. And he's one of those players we just need to build a team around. Yeah,
speaking of which, do the West Ham fans who also support England care about whether or not he chooses Ireland or England at this point?
I mean, it's one of those. I mean, as someone from England, obviously I'd love to see great young players playing for us. And I think that we've got a team now that is set up to support those young players where for, a few decades we didn't. But, I mean, it's up to him. And I think again, no one would hold anything against him for playing for Ireland or England. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that will kick off about everything in this game, in this world. I think as long as he's happy, I'm happy. I think international football has always come second to me to club football. So whatever's all right by Declan is all right by me.
Sam, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Very much for having me.
It's Sam Diss there, writer and editor at Mundial magazine. You can get him on Twitter as well.
I don't like our constant bashing of the cup. I don't know, I've kind of like been sucked into your...
You changed your mind?
Into your corporate mindset. The way you always bash the romance and the magic and...
I asked you... You asked me. It's whereas...
No, I'm kind of like... kind of second with myself, to be honest with you, that I've kind of been sucked into the idea that top four is more important than the cup.
Well, it's not that it's more important. It's just that you don't get sacked if you finish in the top four. You get sacked if you win the cup and like finish bottom half or get relegated. Like...
Yeah, like it's definitely more important for the boards that run these football clubs to finish in the top four. But now this has started to filter into fan culture, where fans are actually thinking, they actually realise that the top four is more important on a corporate level, and it starts to seep into their own consciousness that maybe the top four is just more important in general, in terms of achievement, in terms of the experience of being a fan.
But being able to recruit and keep the best players, which is what you want when you're going to pay to see the team. Like there's two sides to this. There are the supporters who identify as part of the group of people who go and watch that team's football and see some reflection, now largely cast some reflection onto the football that they see. And then there are the other people who want to go and be entertained in their downtime And football has both of those things. Football has those people who identify with the culture of football in somewhere, especially somewhere like England, where you see the Championship have massive amounts of people going week in, week out, and the quality of football on fair ranges between pretty good and really interesting leads to absolutely shocking stuff. And yet people still go and identify and want to be part of a larger tribe of people. And then a bunch of other people go because they want to go and watch the best players play good football. And it depends on what you are. I would argue that most of the people in Ireland who are watching football in England are the latter, who want to be a bit entertained. And some of them have the very deep ingrained cultural relationship with a team from England, and that's up to you how you got that, fair play. But like for everybody else, get the money in, finish top 4, get better players.
Is that entertainment?
Maybe then you might be able, well, because
probably is a means to an end for entertainment.
Absolutely.
Going on a cup run is also entertainment. Like there is entertainment from, like, okay, let's call a spade here. Any Manchester City fans who witnessed them beating Burton Albion 9-0, that's pretty entertaining. Like, they're looking at that, they're like, yeah, let's crush them in. Let's just show our superiority. And
Man City try and win every competition they're in. So because they're
not really part of this. But from a Spurs perspective, there would certainly be entertainment.
Would I give up the Aston Villa reaching the final of the Cup under Sherwood and the moment of magic from Jack Grealish to still have them in the Premier League? Yeah, I would. I'd much prefer them to be.
But is that definitely the transaction that would have happened?
No, that's not how it works. But like
exactly.
But if I'm West Ham and I look at what happened to Villa, I'm like, oh, they went in that cup run that time. Remember that happened? Actually, the cup run sustained Villa and they went down the next season. But anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, like I kind of do, but I kind of also think that we don't need to pick and choose between certain things sometimes. That the value of finishing the top 4 is certainly large, and it's borderline essential for a club like Tottenham Hotspur, who are already kind of operate at kind of a lower financial level than the rest of their top 6 counterparts. But also, what is the value to their supporters? What is the value of being a Spurs fan? Like, adding a trophy and going on a cup run is just as entertaining as Tottenham Hotspur going into the transfer market and signing a player for 50 million quid because they're a Champions League team. Yeah,
except they haven't signed any players, and that's probably why it's fair enough for Pochettino to put it.
They are a special case, I'll give you that.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so let's move on. We are going to get to the thoughts of Darren Cleary in just a minute. We'll talk about the news today, but also some of the Dublin stuff. But first, here's Mike Quirk on Kerry's win yesterday.
So, Mike, it's full-time here in Killarney. What was the big takeaway from a Kerry perspective this afternoon?
I just think you've got to be happy with the way the young guys performed. Like I said, Diarmuid O'Connor and Shane Ryan inside in goals, obviously Darren Moynihan, even Tom Sullivan, who hasn't been there hugely. So I think there was a lot of positives from Kerry's perspective, but particularly with the way the young guys performed, and they adapted to the physicality of Tyrone and even brought that level of physicality up, I think, themselves in the tackle, which was Kerry's probably best attribute today, which you wouldn't often say was the way they tackled and the way they out-physical Tyrone, I suppose.
Is the blanket defence, if I can use that term, going to become a feature of this Kerry team?
You'd hope not. Obviously, I don't think Kerry people particularly are enamoured with that kind of way of playing, and I don't think it will be. I think it's just a case of that's what we saw today, because they don't have a huge amount of work done. I think down the line you'll see this a system come to play where it's all about heads up football and moving the ball as quick as we can, and while we don't want 14 men behind the ball all the time, you'll certainly see some kind of defensive structure. But it's the actual technique of the tackling. I think today that was the most impressive thing, that when there was opportunities one-on-one for guys to make contact and try and dislodge the ball, we saw a lot of that, which it wasn't so much of guys running into 3 and 4 bodies, it was a lot of one-on-one dispositions, which that's encouraging. That's what you want to see. You want to see guys working on that actual technique, and we saw that today. While admittedly there was a lot of bodies behind the ball, it slowed Tyrone down enough to give guys those opportunities at tackling.
Of the 2 teams you saw today, who's more likely to challenge once the business end of the season comes around?
Yeah, I wouldn't have said Kerry at the start, obviously, with Tyrone making the All-Ireland final last year, but I thought Kerry, for with all the upheaval in terms of new management and players retiring and coming back into the scene, I think Kerry have a lot to be optimistic about after today, particularly with those young guys that really kind of put their stamp on things. And if you take nothing away but Shane Ryan and Diarmuid O'Connor and Darren Moynihan as 3 guys making their full debut in front of Killarney in a big crowd, it was hugely encouraging from that perspective alone. alone. And I think the more that Peter Keane is allowed to blood these young guys and give them as much experience of that kind of an atmosphere and that kind of a contest as possible, I think by the time you get to the championship, it's going to be it's going to be a much healthier squad and much more competition, which you want.
And what was your take on Tyrone this afternoon?
I was really disappointed with him, obviously. I just expected a lot more. I thought, because of the McKenna Cup and because of being in the All-Ireland final and because of the experience they would have garnered from that, it was a game that was set up for them to come down here and get to 2 points, and they weren't capable. It wasn't a lack of effort, it wasn't anything like that. It was just, I think they was probably surprised that Kerry were as defensive as they were, carried a lot of bodies back there at times, and it was difficult for guys until Peter Hart went in full forward and started causing a bit of trouble. It was difficult for them to find any kind of fluency in attack, and Kerry were probably the more accurate and had the more dangerous forwards and picked off enough scores to get over the line.
Mike Quirk there, speaking with Owen Sheehan yesterday at Killarney after, what is that? Oh.
Big emphasis on my surname there.
Yeah. Good camera work on.
You know me.
A bit of exposure in the background.
My middle name is Francis, more like Francis Ford Coppola.
How are you, Darren?
I'm very well, Jeff.
You were a one-man Twitter campaign last night to get Monaghan player sent off.
No, I wasn't.
Zapruder film versus after Zapruder film.
No, I wasn't. I just spotted 2 instances where I was surprised that they weren't dealt with on the pitch.
Now you know what it's like to come up against Dublin in Croke Park. That feeling of like, that should have been given.
We sat here after the game against Longford last year, and we had a 20-minute debate about whether or not if you make contact with the face, you should be sent off. And at the time, I thought that it's an occupational hazard of a contact game, and both of you said no, any contact with the face, zero tolerance, get rid of it. And I didn't see anyone that exercised about Macaulay getting a pop in the face yesterday.
Who punched him in the face?
You haven't seen the clip?
I was at the Kerry game.
It's on Twitter.
So is it clear enough?
But who's the Monaghan player who punched him?
I thought it was relatively clear. At the same time, it was quite like the Tony Kelly foul from the night before, which people would felt strongly wasn't a red card. I would have more issue with the McCarran one on John Small on the ground, where he comes through him, he hits him in the back of the head with the knee. If it's not deliberate, it's reckless. The Macaulay one is fine, it's not fine in isolation, but at the same time, I think the knee is worse. I think there's extenuating circumstances. You could probably say the ball's there, it's just a coming together between the hand and the face. The one McCarran on the ground on Small, I thought probably should have been dealt with. I don't think the referee seen it. I think if the referee sees it, he'll show a red. There was a yellow card shown moments later, but I think that was for a tussle. Fenton had a clear view of what happened. He grabbed him. There was a bit of a pushing and shoving, and then there was a yellow shown for that.
Okay. Are we to expect teams to try and rough Dublin up? Is that what the Monaghan template is here?
I think it's fair enough. I don't think you can read a whole lot into it. Monaghan were brilliant. They obviously have prepared really, really well for the game. I think Dublin had 2 collective sessions as a group. The group that would have played yesterday, I think most of those players were on holidays 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't think they're at a level where they should have been in a position to be 6 points up. I was surprised Dublin started as well as they did, but Monaghan were great. You can't really have too many complaints about losing to the better side and the way that they went about winning the game, particularly the long passing, the kick passing, really accurate. They took their chances really well.
It's just the refereeing you had a problem with.
I thought there was just one particular instance where I thought if he had seen it, it would have been a red. I think he missed it, so he can't complain if he misses it. If he sees it and doesn't give a red, that's the issue. I think he missed it.
Kick to the head, kick to the back of John Small's head. Yeah, fair enough. And the Macaulay one,
it's Dermot Malone.
You think somebody's looking at him and does him with is it kind of, it's a push, a closed fist push?
Yeah, with both hands, and it's Macaulay he's running at full tilt towards Malone, who's just standing his ground, in fairness. So I would have less of an issue with that. At the same time, last year there was a witch hunt for Johnny Cooper when he made contact, I think, with I can't remember the Longford players at the time, with the face, and I don't think that the narrative is the same when it's a Dublin player on the receiving end than if it's a Dublin player on the offending end.
So Johnny Cooper should have been sent off, you're now saying?
No, absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, it is though. If you
No.
That they should both be treated equally.
I think
it should be a red card in both instances.
No, I didn't think the first one was a red card.
Okay, so
I think it was a yellow card and there was no card given.
Johnny Cooper got a yellow card. Challenge.
Last year.
And there was no retrospective. So the witch hunt didn't result in anything.
No, but it was coordinated and it was orchestrated and it was.
Was it?
Yeah, it was done so to point out the fact that Dublin get away with murder, and it was a way of trying to influence, I think, referees going forward. And there was a couple of leading pundits that tried to draw attention to something that was innocuous enough, I think.
Digger, good morning to you, Digger, says, if Darren wants to moan about the referee, can he explain how Scully didn't get a red for his kick in the last minute? No, I didn't see it.
I don't want to complain, but they're two different referees, first of all. So I'd be complaining about a different person.
What do you mean?
There was a change of referee at half time.
Okay, so
Ulrich was hurt.
Well, I mean, all right.
So it's not to...
So Scully didn't have a kick, or did have a kick, but didn't get a red card?
I didn't spot it. I didn't see it. I genuinely didn't.
Okay.
No, I don't think the Macaulay one was a red. I do think the second one, had the referee seen it, he'll give a red, because I think in an instance where a guy is on the ground and you make contact with his head, with your knee, it's reckless, it's probably dangerous, and I think that's a red card.
All right.
I'm not going to lie, though, I'm just catching up with it. It does look bad. It does look very bad, actually.
Both of them should have been.
No, I don't think the Macaulay. I'm kind of with Darren on the Macaulay one. I don't think that's. I think you can definitely give Dermot Malone the benefit of the doubt. The other one does look bad.
It's the lack of consistency, though, because Kelly gets sent off for something that looks quite like that. I know it's hurling and football, it's different, but there's no consistency.
Yeah, I do disagree with your point, though, about... Well, no, I don't think you made the point. And I know this is kind of classic whataboutery, kind of like Digger saying there, but there is that feeling that you're feeling right now about inconsistency and injustice about little things with refereeing. We felt this for a long time as a supporter that goes up against Dublin GA, and I know that's whataboutery, but just take that feeling, bottle it, and now you know what it's like to not be from Dublin.
Like, if it had an essential bearing on the game, if it changed the course of the game, I'd probably be more angry about it. But at the same time, I think you could have no complaints from a Dublin point of view. I think they were beaten by the better team. I think Monaghan were just better in the second half in particular.
Nathan Murphy tweets, are we going to have the PR... Nathan Murphy tweets, are we going to have the PR arm of Dublin GAA on every Monday morning? Yes, we have Darren on every single morning. We have him on every single morning.
So I want to know who the pundits are that orchestrated the campaign.
The Mayo PR representative of Ireland. The most famous son of Mayo. The second most famous son of Mayo.
Yeah. Look, you guys all have your jobs to do and you're all just doing them.
It was Spillane, wasn't it?
Was it Spillane?
Yeah, and on this programme as well, I would say there was a relatively orchestrated...
There was nothing orchestrated. It should have been a red card. I think it should have been a red card. Come on, it should have.
You don't think the Macaulay one was a red card?
I didn't say that. I actually think the Macaulay one is. I think that we're going to enter a phase where anybody who makes contact with a head injury, with the head area in any kind of forceful way, any of those tackles are all going to start being red cards sooner rather than later. And the sooner we move to that, the better. And any contact with the face area, because you have a duty of care, should be a red card. Like the fact that you can't even look and see a replay and go, why was Keith Higgins so pissed off? What incensed Keith Higgins, who is one of the most experienced footballers in the country still playing football at the moment? I've never seen him react like that before. Why does he turn around and respond to that? Let's just go over and have a look and go, ooh, well, straight red, and we'll deal with you afterwards. And then we'll come up with a 3-month or 6-month ban for that type of behaviour. Instead, it looks like it's going to be anything from 1 game to maybe 3 games, and we'll see what happens. Like nonsensical stuff, really, when you think about it.
I think there's a danger of watering the game down too much. I think I agree with your point in principle. If it's a violent act or a strike towards the head, absolutely it should be dealt with the most severe manner possible. In terms
or a gouge.
Or a gouge, yeah, absolutely. Deal with that. Zero tolerance. But in a contact sport, I think there is a little bit of room for error, and I don't think you're going to be able to eliminate all contact, accidental or otherwise, with the head.
I can't wait for the retribution from the Dublin players for this, and we will get you on to discuss the incidences. Like, you should just realise what county you're from and how they are the experts of this, and this is part of the aura that they have.
They absolutely play on the edge. We've established that.
More than any other county in Ireland.
And get away with it too.
And get away with it. Yeah. They are experts, evil geniuses.
Welcome to the ball game.
It's a very good morning for Monaghan. The Ulster side enjoyed the best possible start to their Alliance League campaign, defeating the All-Ireland champions Dublin, running out deserved 213 to 113 winners in the end. Niall Scully's goal helped the boys in blue open up a 6-point lead in the first half. Stephen O'Hanlon came off the bench and seconds later hit the back of the net on his league debut. Shane Kerry also raised the green flag as Monaghan secured the points. For the Ulster side, it's their second win in a row over Dublin. Their manager Malachy O'Rourke was full of praise for his forwards, in particular O'Hanlon, Conor McManus and Jack McCarron.
We were hoping the boys would have an impact when they came in, and I suppose we couldn't have dreamt that it was going to be so immediate and so effective. And as you say, look, at everybody knows Connor at this stage, and he had a massive impact there. His ability to find space, and then I thought the second goal, he could have took the shot himself, but he gave it to Stephen, and then Stephen transferred to Shane, and he palmed it in. And then Stephen's first goal, but I think as well Jack McCarn had a big part to play in both. I thought he threaded a couple of great balls through, and Stephen had a lot of work to do. He won it, but the goalkeeper came out, and he went round, got round him and squeezed the ball, so he took it really well. So no, it was really pleasing, and look, we're trying to improve the panel all the time, and so it's delighted for Stephen, and look, it's great to get the points.
Yeah, it's a good start to the league for them to beat Dublin and get us up and running and see what's going to happen, and so let the Dubs know that it's not going to be another sauntering All-Ireland like last year's was. I really like Darren, says Digger, to start with, but the Dubs being on the wrong end of a referee for once. Ha! Niall Scully last minute though, swipe of the leg, Daniel LaRusso sweep the leg job. I was like, who's that?
Anthony Miles has been in touch.
I did see that.
The Karate Kid, come on, surely, no?
Tripped over. There wasn't much in it.
I know what the Karate Kid is, Ger. Like, stop culturally embarrassing me, culturally shaming me every single morning here. Anthony Miles has been in touch saying nothing in either incident. Move on, lads. Macaulay fumbled the ball and dropped his head. Player was coming in to tackle him.
He was standing up straight.
The knee was opportunistic. Laughing emoji, covering the face emoji.
Come on, Mosey.
Kerry boss Peter Keane enjoyed the perfect start to his reign in the Kingdom as they defeated Tyrone by 11 points to 7 at Fitzgerald Stadium yesterday. Sean O'Shea ran the show, kicking 6 points, 4 from frees, and won a brilliant sideline kick which showed shades of the great Maurice Fitzgerald. The last 4 Kerry managers lost their opening Alliance League games. Keane was pleased to snap that streak. He spoke to Eoin after the game.
We've been working on that, and I suppose, look, we wanted to get competitive and I suppose try and be hard and be difficult to play against and keep a score down. And I think, look, at the end of the day, 7 points was what we conceded, and look, I take that any day. The priority is to try and get us difficult to play against, and then once you get a structure in place and get some kind of a foundation into it that you can build on from there. We'd like to play an open, attacking type of football, and if we can, we will. It was a home game. They always tell you should try and win your home games, and we knew that was going to be difficult because all our home games are difficult. All our away games are going to be difficult as well, but the home games in particular, where people are expecting you to win, and that was a very pleasing thing coming out here today to have one.
I think the 4 managers before you, just on a final point, all lost their first game as Kerry manager, so you've actually bucked that trend. You must be delighted sitting here today, because a lot of people are saying that your own team looks strong enough to come down here and get the win today.
It was strong. I hope you're not putting a hex on me. Good luck and thanks.
Good luck.
Galway had 2 points to spare as they held off Cavan to get their Division 1 campaign off to a winning start. 5 players sin-binned in a niggly enough game that the tribesmen edged by 13 points to 11. Cavan reduced to 12 men for 5 minutes in the second half when they had 3 players in the bin at the same time. In the hurling, Kilkenny started the defence of their Alliance League title with a 2-18-17 win over Cork. Billy Ryan and Richie Leahy both found the back of the net at Nolan Park. Rebels boss John Myler admits they were simply beaten by the better team.
The result is disappointing. Like Kilkenny were by far the better team over the 70 minutes. They were more cohesive, they were more supporting one another, and they got 2 goals at critical stages in the game, and it kind of stopped our momentum going forward. And then the save by Owen Murphy from Hoggy there towards the end of the second half really could have set up a hectic finish, but it was a good save by Murphy. When we couldn't get past their half-back line, then they were on top, but they were more cohesive. Their support play, their passing play, all of that was much better than ours.
The reigning All-Ireland champions Limerick also got their Division 1A campaign off to a winning start, beating Wexford. In Division 1B, Waterford sent out a statement in their opening league win over Offaly, claiming a 228-7 win. Meanwhile, Galway were 127-215 victors against Laois. Jim Gavin has called on the GAA to show a clear vision for the future of Gaelic football. The Dublin manager cut a frustrated figure as he questioned the decision to introduce 5 new rules, only to ditch one on the eve of the Alliance League. The 5-time All-Ireland winning manager questioned why the GAA are treating the illness without addressing the symptoms when talking about the over-reliance on hand passing and the rule brought about to limit that. Gavin also said trying to emulate hurling was futile.
Personally, I would have just gone out and introduced them, and so you have it, and when you go back to play with your clubs, you have it. And we've players playing Sigerson now on Wednesday. They have a completely different set of rules, and they're two completely different games. And I don't think I heard probably from the rules committee very early on they were talking about trying to make the game a contest, and to me that's probably talking that it's trying to make the game a bit like hurling, and they're completely different games. One, you can accurately pass the ball 70 yards. You can half that in Gaelic football, so they're completely different games with different equipment that's used, and it's probably a wrong comparison. Even though we both play both codes. I think that one might be influencing the other. So I think, to go back to my original point, I think until the GAA articulate their vision on what they want Gaelic football to be, then we can understand the reason why these changes come in. But to put a definite or a limitation on hand passes because there's too many hand passes in the game, that doesn't explain why teams are hand passing more than they probably did in the past. So until we get the why from them, I think there'll still be confusion and probably a bit of frustration from some quarters.
Well, in tennis, Rafael Nadal says he needs time and work to return to his best. The Spanish second seed went down in straight sets to world number one Novak Djokovic in the final of the Australian Open. Although reaching the decider without dropping a set, Nadal said he was still short of his best after a long injury layoff. And Notts County are making headlines this morning for all the wrong reasons. Owner Alan Hardy has put the club up for sale, but he insists it has nothing to do with him accidentally posting a photo of his private parts on social media. The announcement came on the same day he accidentally tweeted the picture. He tweeted a screenshot, but his camera roll was visible at the bottom of the image. Hardy says he is selling in order to focus on his external business portfolio.
Right. Are we allowed to talk about Royal Rumble? Why is it spoiler alert? Spoiler alerts?
Because it's on very late and people record it, such as Darren Cleary, and like to watch it the next day, except you just reveal the winner.
I already know who won. Yeah, thanks, Ger.
Okay, you know half of the people who won because there's two winners, right?
Yeah, the male winner and a female winner.
Okay, well, so Becky the Man Lynch has won, right? I didn't realise, I'm reading her Wikipedia page. So she had a really serious but head injury in 2006 and took 6 years away from the sport, during which time she trained as an actor in DIT in the Gaiety School of Acting and also worked as a flight attendant with Aer Lingus for 2 years. Came
back as a stuntman on film sets as well.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah, she's a great story.
I didn't know any of the background. Like, is there any good piece written out there that is any like long form 6,000 words on what you do for 6 years when you're away from training to be a wrestler and real life intervenes and then you make this comeback and so this is mega buddy now if you win this, right? Like you're signing things and getting paid and you're on ads and you're on...
It's a huge deal.
Like this is explosion, right?
She's probably going to be the first female main eventer in that WrestleMania.
Right.
That's never happened before, which would be a huge deal.
Born in Limerick and raised in Dublin.
Baldoyle, I think, yeah.
All right, okay. Good stuff, thanks very much. We're going to move on to the rest of the weekend Gaelic football action, talk about some of the issues arising from it with Conor McKeown in a minute. Here's Colm Keys outlining some of the difficulties that the provincial championships are going to face in the long run.
Are we married to the idea of the provincial championships?
Well, in the short term, yeah, and maybe even in the mid-term, long term, I think the way demographics are going, I think they'll be obsolete in a number of years. I couldn't say how long, but the population flow is from west to east and from north to east, and I see a situation in maybe a decade, I don't know, maybe even shorter than that, where just some counties know they have no chance of winning the provincial championship, and that'll happen in the east too, because obviously it's hard to see. So many counties are locked out of winning a Leinster championship in the short term, I think, and that's reality. There's no getting away from that. Dublin have such a strong hold on it that it could force change if they continue to win their provincial championship at ease, and if Kerry continue to win it at ease as they have for the last number of years, you could see change down the line. I don't know where. Obviously, it's been teased out to maybe 4/8 divisional structure, something like that, but it's an annual argument that keeps on rolling and will continue to roll.
All right, so I'm delighted to have got Conor McKeown on the line to talk to us about some of the weekend's action as well. Conor, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, lads.
So in a weird kind of way, is Jim Gavin not that displeased about the fact that his team came back after 2 collective sessions, as Darren says, started really well, showed some signs of what it is we know they are, and then, got a proper battle against Monaghan yesterday?
Yeah, I think they were always going to get a proper battle. I know a lot of people kind of in and around Dublin that were pretty, they would have backed Monaghan because if you take it that Dublin were missing as many players as they were and they had such little competitive or collective training done by the time they hit the game, they were always going to be gassed. I think what changed the dynamic in a big way was when they went so far up early on in the game, and then you're looking at it saying, well, look, if Dublin are 6 or 7 points up here, they don't concede those sort of leads anymore. That's just not a trait of this team. But you can see as the game wore on that Monaghan gradually got into it. It was pretty ferocious for a game at the end of January in terms of the physical interaction. But I think that's how players kind of compensate for their lack of match fitness at this time of year. But it was interesting that Monaghan used the offensive mark so well because, just reading Jim's quotes there this morning and sort of reading between the lines, I think what he's saying is that given that only some of these rules made it in for the league, and they won't be here for the championship whatsoever, they're actually a bit of an irritant. And I think you can probably draw a line between the managers that need to do really well in the league and the managers that are using the league to simply set their team up for the championship. And I think that's the same demarcation that you can invoke to show which team are actually practicing very seriously with these rules and which team aren't.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense if you're the Dubs and every single fibre of your being is trying to win 5 in a row to spend 3 or 4 months perfecting the art of the offensive mark when it's going to be useless for you in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, we were here with Owen and Anthony Miles on Thursday, and Anthony was talking about the offensive mark and how he thought it might change the game in a very positive way, and I was hugely sceptical because, for the simple reason that if an offensive mark is such a rewarding skill to execute in a game, opposition teams inevitably are going to set up in such a way that makes it harder for you to execute that. But Dublin didn't really make any great allowances to how Monaghan started to kick the ball in the second half, particularly when the two lads came on. So it'll be interesting to see whether it's the law of diminishing returns as the league goes on, because it's such a potent weapon. A free kick from inside the 45, that's kind of gold dust to a lot of teams in tight Division 1 games. So, I'd be interested to see whether it actually makes for a more defensive game for a lot of teams that would be hell-bent on not conceding that defensive mark. But I think, games involving in Dublin this year mightn't be the best kind of test cases for deciding how some of these rules are being carried out.
Is that because Dublin tend to allow the man inside to sometimes just obtain possession as long as that defender is capable of actually smothering that person and making sure that person goes nowhere? Because it seems that that's a very effective manner of Dublin and their swarm defence.
Yeah, they do an awful lot of putting pressure on the ball out the pitch before it gets kicked in. And, traditionally they've gone with very pacey defenders who can kind of get out in front of their man. They almost invite the kick in and then kind of back themselves to beat the man out in front of the ball. But, I think, again, at this time of year, and unfortunately this will colour an awful lot of the conversations we have about GAA over the next couple of weeks, at this time of year, it's very hard to put that kind of pressure on the ball out the pitch because, you need an awful lot of fitness in your legs. And, it was obvious that, I think it was a fair performance from Dublin yesterday given the circumstances. But, they were definitely gassed. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, in a way, Dublin need to expect that the target on their back this year is going to be more pronounced than it has been in previous years. And again, I suspect that actually, if you're the Dublin management team, the hard physical battle that they got is what they're going to expect from every game in the league. And again, not the worst thing to be able to get into that team and to that dressing room this week and go, look, that's exactly what you're going to face week in, week out. Now we're here and we're back to business. Not that the team needs any motivation, because we know they don't, but they're going to be reading about the hunger issue in the papers and.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing about it from a Dublin point of view is that, when you play every week in Division 1, that every team you play is using you as a barometer, that every team, when they set up against you, are saying to themselves, well, if we can beat Dublin this weekend, every manager is saying we can use that to say, look, that's Malachy O'Rourke's second time in a row beating Dublin, albeit in a league game that was the last league game of the season last year, and this year in the first league game of the season. So, that's still a huge thing for Malachy O'Rourke to be able to turn around to his players and say, look, we've beaten them twice, let's go and beat them in Croke Park in a championship game. And every manager is saying that now as well. And there are an awful lot of teams that are in that bracket of the second tier. The first tier is really Dublin, and after that, is there much difference at the moment between Kerry and Monaghan and Galway and Mayo? There's probably not a whole lot. So they know that the same thing is going to happen next week when Galway come to Croke Park. Galway beating Dublin and Croke Park, even at this early stage in the league, would be a step up for them. And then it's an interesting dynamic because Dublin go to Tralee for their third game of the league. So, whatever levels of fitness they had yesterday in that game, they're not going to be hugely improved in 2 weeks' time because the matches come pretty thick and fast. So, and they have players playing Sigerson Cup this week as well. So, this is probably what we'll see for Dublin for the next 2 weeks until they have that I think 1 week break in the middle of the league.
Yeah, I overheard someone in Killarney saying yesterday that Kerry will have the opportunity to relegate Dublin on the 9th of February.
Yeah, well, actually, that game would be very interesting to watch, because 2 years ago, the Dublin game down in Tralee, it was a Saturday night game, and it was just, I think it was the day after St. Patrick's Day, and it was just getting dark when they threw the ball in for it, and it was one of those unique kind of sparky atmospheres, and I think it will be again this year. But Dublin kind of do expect that everywhere they go. They tend to be able to put it out of their head and get a performance. You know, you just look at how well they played belatedly last year when they went up to Oma and beat Tyrone in the Super 8 thing. So, like, none of this is particularly new, and it was interesting that Jim Gavin handed out no debuts yesterday, that despite the number of players that he was missing, he still went with people who've been around the squad for a long, long time. You know, it's like Jim is obviously building his team for the championship, but it's not about experimentation in terms of individual players, or it certainly isn't for the moment.
You talk about kind of cauldrons of atmospheres when it comes to National League, and McHale Park is definitely one of them, and it seemed that way. I wasn't there myself, but it seemed that way on Saturday night. What did you make of James Horan's first return to a competitive game as Mayo manager?
I think it was probably went along expected lines. You know, you're not going to get a team going out and blowing another team away at this time of year in Division 1 when they're both kind of physically at the same space. You know, it's hard to read. It really is hard to read. It was a pretty, you know, I wouldn't say it was a dour game, but it wasn't a brilliant game. I think Brian Reap scoring a goal for Mayo, you know, obviously a vital goal at that was a huge thing for them, because, you know, they are looking for young players to come through into the team, and as much as you want to give players like himself and Diskin lots of game time, they are inside forwards. If they don't get on the scoreboard and they're being kept in the team until Andy Moran and Cillian O'Connor come back, it'll feel to them that all they're doing is being picked in the team until Andy Moran and Cillian O'Connor come back. So yeah, there were some bright points, but look, you know, that's a pretty experienced Mayo team, and you kind of would have expected them to win it regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, great stats at the end of the game. 1986 was the last time that Roscommon have won there in the championship, and 1988 was the last time they've won there in the league. So you know, it's been a while since they won a game in Castlebar, and it certainly wasn't going to happen at the weekend in that weather. I don't know what you made of the Kerry Tyrone performance. Owen said that the first time Kerry play on national TV, there might be a bit of outcry about the style of play when everybody gets the opportunity to see the fact that they were out Tyroning Tyrone at the weekend.
They were a bit, but I don't think that's a particularly new development.
No.
You know, managers kind of cut their cloth depending on games, and like Kerry did it plenty of times over the last couple of years when it suited them too. Like, and they go back to the 2014 All-Ireland final, they out Donegal. So, you know, again, I think Peter Keane is one of these managers that actually has to strike a very particular balance, that he knows he can't go on a run of games and lose them because there will be people howling at the moon down in Kerry. That's just the way it goes. And by the same token, he has to bring young players into the squad, because that's really what he's left with. I was really interested that Darren Moynihan and Donnacha O'Connor started but weren't named to the team, and that strikes me as a manager who is conscious of trying to sort of ease any bit of pressure or talk or any kind of burden on young players that he's putting into the team. Because, you know, if you name that on a Friday night and people spend the weekend analysing these two lads, who they are and what they're going to contribute, it might put a small bit of pressure on them. So I don't know whether that was a preordained move or whether it was a calculated move, but it was an interesting one, because like, they're two good players, and I thought they played pretty well yesterday.
I think it was calculated. I think James Dunne, who was carrying a knock into the weekend as well, so I'd say that move was definitely calculated. Dermot O'Connor as well, singled out for praise by Mike Work yesterday. The other game we wanted to just briefly touch on, obviously, was Galway against Cavan, and I'm not sure, was it you making the point? Somebody was making the point anyway on the show over the last week, Conor, that there is this sort of yo-yo system that might develop in football over the next couple of years, where you've got the top 7 teams and then one of them gets relegated every year, and kind of a rotating cast of the Cavans and the Roscommons and whoever else may come up and down. It seems that pattern might start to emerge already, with Roscommon and Cavan, as I mentioned, having lost at the weekend.
Yeah, that's a defeat for Cavan and Roscommon. And like, if you go back to, was it 2 years ago, when Kevin McStay got Roscommon into Division 1 for the first time, they made a very, very conscientious effort to start it. I think they won 3 of their first 4 games and preserved Division 1 status very, very early. And it looked like a great move, and then they flatlined in the championship. So, like, you know, I think a manager, if they're organised, and it mightn't be true of Roscommon in this situation because they only appointed a manager when Anthony Cunningham was appointed back in November. But I think if you're organised enough, you could make hay in the league, but it might be at the expense of further down the tracks. And the same thing with Cavan yesterday. I think they had 3 black cards against Galway. which, you know, it's not going to end well for you if you kind of fall into that trap, because, you know, there's a, you know, the terms of engagement are different in Division 1, and you have to be, you know, as much as you want to front up the teams, you have to be smart about how you play your game as well. And just on the limited highlights that I saw, they probably look to be a small bit naive.
Conor, great stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Conor McKeown there giving us some thoughts about the weekend's GAA. Some quick breaking news for you. I mean, not that this is really breaking, but it's been confirmed that Roy Keane will start today as Martin O'Neill's number 2 at Nottingham Forest. He has completed the deal and was at the game at the weekend, so it was fairly obvious. There's Daniel Taylor tweeting late last night saying he's at the training ground this morning, back in football, will be confirmed later as Martin O'Neill's assistant. So that is done and dusted, not entirely unexpected, as I said. Now, Paul Kimmage was on the pay-per-view, didn't hold back when dissecting a piece by Neil Francis on the Sunday pay-per-view, with Joe yesterday. Have a look.
We get a sense of it then. When he introduces us to Declan Rice at West Ham. Every week I see all of our national newspapers give acres of space, acres of room to this young boy called Declan Rice of West Ham, a peripheral figure to most people on this island, but to some it seems like he's the Messiah. The boy Rice was born in Kingston upon Thames. Anyway, he gives a sense of Rice and where he's from, and the fact that he's been encouraged to throw his allegiance in with the national team. And Jesus, I don't know what it's about. You know, imagine the scene when the boy Rice, after numerous unanswered calls from Mick McCarthy and Robbie Keane, gets a call from his mother. There is a gruff man from Crumlin and an even gruffer man from Barnsley, and they want to talk to you about playing for, you know, the island of Ireland. Now, what is this? What is he saying here? This is rugby country. We are a superior class. These football gurriers, you know.
I think it leads on from an argument that Neil has been having about the national sport, and I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous to try and compare the two sports. And at a time when Neil was at his peak in sport and his prowess was at his magnificent. I was competing as well, and I had this chip on my shoulder about the soccer team too. I didn't like the soccer team. I thought that they were vulture-like in their extraction of any kind of sponsorship that lay around Ireland, and I can understand this. But I've grown up now. I'm over it.
Yeah, Gary O'Toole saying he's grown up and he's over it. You can catch that full thing on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/off the wall. And make sure you turn on notifications so anytime we go live you'll get a little ping on your phone. Now, some of the leading figures from across Irish technology, social innovation, music, sport and business will be on hand today to announce details of the AIB Future Sparks Festival 2019. And now in its second year, over 7,500 senior level students will descend upon the RDS on the 14th of March for an event that will bring together business leaders and young entrepreneurs to inspire students and show them the power of their potential. Representing the world of sport will be Irish rugby legend Peter Stringer, who's with us now. You know, obviously have lots of potential as a dancer, it turns out. Are you a bit knackered?
I am a bit knackered now. It was a long day yesterday in the studio from 8 o'clock in the morning till about 11 o'clock last night. It's a long process.
Yeah.
But look, something different, something out of my comfort zone, something that I'm enjoy doing, and I'm still in it to fight another day, as they say.
I was making the point though that like you have a slight advantage in that you are a professional athlete and have kind of at least got some experience with the physical stuff.
It's the two left feet that come at a bit of a disadvantage. It is tough. Look, and there are actors in there who can bring out performances. Yes, the fitness side of things is not a problem for me. It's mentally learning routines and trying to transfer those messages from your head down to your feet and your hands, and that's the challenge.
So for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, how wide has the spectrum been in terms of the different dances you've executed?
So yeah, initially I was a salsa, then I was to a quick step, and last night I was a paso. So going from kind of a Latin to a ballroom to a Latin dance is very, very difficult, and the quick step was quite tough for you to maintain a very still upper body, but your feet were going 100 miles an hour. So, and the different foot positions which they critique you on. So your foot can be turned out for one and turned in for another, and it can be completely wrong. So it's learning those kind of finer details, which is not easy.
Is there any correlation between professional sport that you've seen that like, oh, you know, we're going to try a new move from a set piece? It's like, no.
Absolutely nothing. I think if you're a lifter in a line out, week one for me was able to lift my dancer, and that was a big plus. Certain dances you can't lift, which I was a bit disappointed about because I feel that that's kind of an area that I can I have a bit of an advantage on. Yeah, pick stuff up, exactly. But other than that, there is absolutely no correlation to anything that I've done before. Yeah.
So you're looking into a new dance this week?
Looking into a new one, yeah. So we're back in the studio today, learning a new routine.
What's it going to be?
We're not allowed to say yet, actually. Right. We're under strict guidelines not to say, but it's very, very tough.
Is it basically full time?
It's full time. We are in 7 or 8 hours a day rehearsing, and it's left up to your own devices in terms of with your dancer how many hours you put in.
Right.
But obviously, the more time that you put in during the week, you don't want to make a fool of yourself on national television live in front of 100,000 people. So
you've done all that though. You've been in big games where you know loads of people are watching. This is obviously just completely different though.
It's completely different. It is, and do you want, as an experience, it is quite nerve-wracking. You go out in front of a live show and people are there to support you, and they're fanatics of the show, the people who go to see it and people who watch it and follow it. But it's so far, I suppose, out of your comfort zone, and to do something like that doesn't come naturally to you, and you try and learn routines, you learn footwork and you learn steps, and as the weeks go on you try and you hopefully feel that it comes naturally to you. But when you have to think about stuff, rugby was like you go out, you do it, your natural movements just happen because you've done it for so long. When you're doing something for 2 or 3 weeks, it's just it feels a little bit awkward at times.
Have you got any constructive criticism from your former teammates?
Constructive criticism is a very, very a difficult thing to say. There's been criticism, whether it's constructive or not. Plenty of WhatsApp messages on the group, which you'd expect. I'd be disappointed if guys had forgotten about me, and there's plenty of guys chipping in on
it's just
what
jealousy.
to do.
It's
jealousy, but you know what? Individually, you're getting a lot of kind of positive messages from guys, but on the group, they all want to be the lads, and they all want to, Peter Clossy,
What's he said?
He's just check out the heels on the whatever, blank out that word. So, for Latin dances, you wear, my heels are probably 2 or 3 inches, which I probably needed for my wedding actually, but they actually would have come in quite handy.
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah, so it's plenty of criticism in terms of what I'm wearing and the tan and everything, so Donncha can really relate to anything, everything that I'm kind of doing in that kind of side of things. So he's given me plenty of advice on how to tan up properly. Yeah.
Did you think twice about it, or was it like, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that?
I thought a lot more than twice about it, yeah. And it's something that I said I would never do because I've never even had those moments of venturing onto a dance floor because you don't drink. You're standing back and you feel that as soon as you go out there, that the whole dance floor will empty. People have just all eyes on you, and you think that's the way it is. If anyone goes out to a nightclub sober, I'm sure they're the same way. So I said I'd never ever do it. If someone said to me, what's your worst nightmare? It would be dancing in front of people. The first day we went to the studios, it was a case where we needed to stand in front of a green screen, in front of about 15 producers, choreographers, directors, and they said, okay, we need you to freestyle dance for 20 minutes. And after 10 minutes into it, they said, would it help if we put some music on?
Oh,
so
no.
you're just there, dancing with no music, and they're just give us something. I'm like, well, I need you to tell me what you want because it just doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
So that was probably the worst day of my life and the worst experience I've ever been through. But my wife convinced me to do it, and she said, look, you're someone who takes on challenges, and there will be no bigger challenge than this. Yeah.
But it does mean that there's no significant time that you've had away from the game where you're like, what am I going to do next? That like it's a weird but brilliant bridge from being a professional athlete into something very intense, that after that's over you can kind of maybe, I guess, you're kicking the can down the road a little bit in terms of dealing with the fact that you're finished as a professional athlete after so long.
Maybe that's why I did it.
But it's a great idea.
I said, I finished in the summer, I announced my retirement, and I said I would take 6 months just to clear the head, have a think about what I wanted to do, come back from the UK, come back to Cork and be around family, and with a young son, 21 months old, just to enjoy a bit of life with family and to step away from the game. And this came up as an opportunity, and I said, do you know what, let's just go for it. The timing was right, and it just seemed like the right thing to do, whether it is or not. But look, I'm enjoying it. It's oh, there we go, look at those,
they're great,
pink suits.
You get to keep all those,
you get to keep them, yeah. It's but look, it's something that for anyone who's looking to do something out of their comfort zone, go do it. It's so easy in life to say no to things, and I know that the end of March will come and I would have regretted not doing it. So I said, look, just go for it. you know, you'd put up with the slagging, and just here I am.
How badly do you want to win it?
I'd love to win it, and it's the same with anything you do. I'm someone that if I'm in something, I'm 100% in it, and there's no point in being in something if you want to win it. Obviously, look, there's dancers there who are, you know, better than me at the moment, and I'm working hard at developing different kind of routines and working on my footwork and stuff. But that'll hopefully come as the weeks go on if I'm still in the competition. But there's no point in being in it if I'm only giving it 50%. So that's just in my nature, my character.
I'm curious about the retirement and what that's been like, because, you know, when Donncha was in the previous year before he announced his retirement, it kind of felt like he was getting to the point where he was ready to retire anyway. That, you know, he'd seen, and he'd scratched the itch of going away from Munster and getting out of that and getting out of the Irish environment, and it was really good for him. But you could also see that, like, he was happy to be the old guy in the changing room when there's two separate WhatsApp groups, one about the snip and one about going out. Were you ready at the end? Had you reached that point, or did you want to continue?
Do you know what? If the right opportunity came up and you had a bit of stability in a contract, then I was in good physical shape. Mentally, I was there to keep playing. And do you know where I was at that time in my career, in being 40, young family in the UK, and not many clubs offering 2 or 3 year contracts for 40-year-olds. So, you know, you're looking at a stage where you're probably 6-month loan contracts, or playing in the championship in England, or a year by year you could be in France, you could be in the UK, and travelling around. We had done it for 6 or 7 years in the UK, and I loved it, and it was the right thing to do for me, leaving Munster to go back and to play in the UK. But for me, in being able to walk away in the position that I was, in being fit, being in better shape than I was before I started playing professional rugby, I had an opportunity to walk out in the Premiership in England at the top, hit 40, and be happy and satisfied with my career and what I had achieved. And that was it. I was content, and I am content with my decision, and I've never kind of looked back. Still in the back of my mind, knowing that if the right thing came up, that, you know, I'd still be ready. So that's kind of my mentality, that, you know, if anything ever kind of came up in the future, I'm not saying that it ever would, but that in my own head I have that comfort in knowing that I could still compete at the highest level.
That's kind of sounds like you're leaving the door open there.
No, I'm not leaving the door open, and you're not, you know, the chances of anything ever happening is probably never going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that how I can kind of take comfort from the fact that I'll never play professional rugby again. I was prepared, and that I can walk away kind of feeling really good physically and mentally, and just really, really happy with what I achieved in the game. You've obviously done a lot of punditry. Is that where you see your future involvement with rugby, or is coaching something that you would be interested in too? I'm enjoying the punditry. It's, you know what, it's a hobby, and what I'm doing at the moment in terms of working with Air Sport and doing bits and pieces in the UK with Premier and BT, and it's something that I'm getting to work with guys, you know, Donncha and Tommy, and you're with guys who you've played with and who understand the game, you know, at the same time that I would have played, and I'm really, really enjoying that, and I don't see it as a full-time thing that's the only thing I'm going to be doing. Yeah. Because coaching is on the radar. It's something that I would love to do at some point, and like at the moment I said I'd take the 6 months and reassess things, but you know, as soon as I commit to something that I know it's going to be full on, it's going to be 100%. And like with any coaching gig that guys get involved in, you know, it's a huge, huge commitment. And again, you're looking at where that's going to be. Is it going to be in Ireland, England, France? Do you move away? And again, I suppose that stability of those jobs are, you know, it can be a year, it can be 2 years. So when the time comes for me to decide if that's the route I want to go down, you want to be, okay, I'm ready for this, I'm ready for the travel, I'm ready for that commitment. So it's something that at the moment I'm doing this, you know, it's maximum kind of 3 month gig if you get to the end, and then again reassess. But it's something that I'm just, once I get my teeth into something, then that's it, you know.
It's weird because Paul Scholes was actually speaking about your BT Sport colleague, saying it last week, that the one thing he really misses about being a player is the sort of training Monday to Friday and then a match on Saturday, and also the sort of buzz of having something really on the line every single week, and that the punditry just doesn't give that to him. He likes it, but it doesn't give him that buzz, and that's why he's so desperate to get back in, to go into management in some capacity. Do you feel that? Do you feel you're missing that?
Yeah, I do, yeah. And I'm at games. I'm in studio doing games, and you can watch them, you can analyse them, and I enjoy that analysis side of things, where you're picking out and you kind of see that high view from a stand or from behind the posts, the high angle of plays, and from my position when I played, that was my game, reading a game, understanding it, and seeing space, and doing analysis on games and teams beforehand, and going back to 2006 and that Biarritz game, and having studied the winger before in that season, and knowing that he had a tendency to kind of slip in behind the scrum and go into that position, and just having that kind of vision and that understanding. That's what I love about the game. Not necessarily kind of being on the pitch and kind of teaching rucking drills and things like that. I see myself as someone that I understand the game and I love it, and if there was a role like that, that's something, that's what I'd love. And you're talking about Paul Scholes, and it just doesn't give you the same, and that'll never ever be replicated in terms of what you had at your pinnacle, running out in front of those huge crowds, 80,000 people, and you won't get that back. And the closest thing you can do is to be part of a team coaching, and I fully understand that, and I get it, and you get that sense of even standing for the All Blacks in Ireland game, and being a pundit and being an analysis on the side of the pitch. You're so close that you could just taste it, and you want to be out there again. So yeah, look, it's something that I'd love to be part of, and to feel that kind of that adrenaline rush again.
What's that pathway then? Because if that's quite a specific role, is it video analysis? Is it defence that you're actually analysing there when you're doing that? Because that's everybody thinks, oh, you're an attack coach, really, what you're talking about, but actually it's the defensive analysis is what has
you're analysing the defensive, I suppose, point of view from the opposition, and how to break that down, and I love that when you see a defensive picture and coming up with even plays. It's on the flip side, it's an attacking kind of a mindset as well, but I've always kind of looked at games and looked at teams, and okay, you can break them down this way, this is what they do, this player has the tendency to this. So it is, again, from a defensive point of view, but you also have that attack mindset, that you have the knowledge that you can break it down and you come up with kind of new ideas. So that's the side of things. Video analysis, that's it, but that's
part of it.
That's part of the start and the process that you go to. Okay, you look at the videos, you can then transfer that knowledge and that information and deliver it to players who are capable of doing it.
Yeah, so it's not a skills coaching role, is it? It's like a backs coach to start with.
To start with, it is, yeah, and it's not necessarily a kind of fundamental skills. It's just the understanding of the game, that mentality, getting guys to read kind of players' positions on the field and just to kind of think for themselves. I think that's what you want, and a good coach will always give players ideas, but it's how players will implement that and how they will, in the split second, change the picture and change something. Actually, do you know what? This isn't on now. It's how they think for themselves on the pitch in pressure situations.
Given that is potentially in your future, you could have stayed at Munster and had that continuity, but in retrospect, it must be hugely beneficial to have experienced a range of different coaches, the good and the bad. When you become a coach, having had bad coaches is going to be very valuable to you, because you'll be able to go, that's how you don't do things.
Yeah.
At the time, you're probably thinking, this is a waste of my time.
This is it, yeah. And going to the UK, leaving Munster, as a player, I never saw myself leaving, and never wanted to leave. But when you're third or fourth choice in a club, as good as the place is, as good as the environment is, it was hell. You're doing all the training, you're doing more training because you need to be fitter. Mentally, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm not getting to run out of the weekend, so you're training Saturday, Sunday to try and make an impact when Monday comes, that you're fit, that you're not kind of having taken your weekend off when other guys have played a game. So that was a kind of a vicious cycle. So it was an environment I loved, but I had to get out for my own sanity, knowing that I could keep playing. But experiencing different coaches, then you move into the UK, you're playing with Saracens, and you see how different teams I suppose they do things differently. Saracens, you know, quite unique in the way they do things. But I'd come from Munster. We had a way of doing things to get success, and you automatically think that that is what you must do to be successful. You go somewhere else and you see, do you know what? There are different ways to do things, yet be successful. So you can kind of take little bits and pieces from different environments that have achieved success. There's not just one pathway to success. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you try and find different ways that will suit different players. You know, the dynamic of the squads are very, very different, but being able to pick out those little bits is invaluable. And like you said, to pick out the bad bits, to make sure that you don't do those. And how I've been a part of teams where coaches do things and, you know, players are like, you know, talking amongst themselves and, you know, bad-mouthing coaches, and you see that environment as well. So it's getting a kind of a blend and a mix of what's going on from a player's point of view and also a coach's point of view, because I basically became a coach in latter years of my career. I'm there in squads with guys who are 18 years of age, and I'm older than most of their parents, you know what I mean? So it's like you're with guys who are just out of school, and you're basically a coach with these guys in that training environment. Yeah.
So that will definitely be a really valuable experience. We want to show you this. It's our depth chart. So we've been going through the depth chart of Irish rugby at the moment. It's fairly obvious that Conor Murray is in the lead and will be completely immovable for the rest of the season, assuming he's fit. Now, this was while just before Luke McGrath got his injury. So at the moment, it looks like John Cooney is really nailed on to start on the bench this weekend. Is that right? Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, given, I suppose, the injury crisis, and Kieran obviously, you know, is out for a while yet. Caelan Blades in the squad as well. You know, really impressed with him as well. You know, he's, in the last kind of couple of months, what he's done for Connacht and the way they've played, himself and Jack Carty have connected really well, and, you know, he's a really kind of an energetic guy. But I think, you know, John Cooney is a guy he's dependable. He's got a boot. He's just got that kind of calmness to him. I think that he's had that experience a little bit longer than Caelan, so I think he'll be on the bench in my eyes.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing is like the prototype now, because Conor Murray plays in the way that he does, and he's a world class box kicker. Does everybody box kick because he's world class and he's the incumbent? Is there any way for anybody else to play their way into the team, or does Conor Murray box kick because that's what his coaches are asking him to do?
I think it's a little bit of both, really. I think there's a plan there that Joe has, obviously, and you see more and more teams doing it now. Back when I first started playing, it was never really that structured to start with, and you just threw the ball around. If there was a bit of space, you kind of move from your 22 and probably play too many phases inside there. But now it's so structured that if you don't make any advantage, and after 2 phases, it's okay. Slow things right down and kick it. And obviously helps that Conor is, you know, world-class kicker, that you're able to put it on the money, you know, 9 times out of 10, and you've got guys kind of chasing the ball, whether it's Stockdale or Earls, or just getting up for those and competing for them, and you have more than a 50-50 chance of getting that ball back. So it's a difficult one. I think you need to have a good kicking game as a 9, and particularly in the way Joe plays, and I suppose not playing too much rugby in your own 22, in your own half, if things aren't on. But it's going to be very, very difficult if you don't have an accurate kicking game to, you know, say, put your hand up and say, I need to be starting in this Irish setup.
Yeah. Cooney has a chance because of the way that things work with Schmidt, that if you do something good for him once, he trusts that more than anything else that has happened. You know, we've seen it countless times. So because of the injuries, obviously Marmion has done loads of really good stuff for Joe Schmidt in the past, and so you would assume that there's some credit in the bank for that. But you know, these decisions, everything's on a knife edge ahead of a World Cup like this.
It is. It's a huge year. It's a huge year. I think, like you mentioned there, Joe, if guys front up, and it always goes back to Kieran Marmion, that time he came on in the wing, and it's in Joe's head, and he's, if players don't let him down and they do a job for him, and he's loyal to them, and it is trying to get that balance with giving guys an opportunity to play, and guys who are playing well for their provinces, and you want guys sharp going to a Six Nations. You don't want to be carrying anyone who hasn't had any, I suppose, any game time or really, I suppose, important match fitness under their belt. So yeah, look, it's a big year. I think guys are going to have to be rotated a small bit. Big emphasis on
keeping that momentum, winning a Six Nations. I know you hear Joe talking about in the media a lot about if we finish in the top 2, you know, we'll be happy, and kind of calming things down a small bit in a big year. But they'll be under no illusions that they will be out to win a Six Nations, and I think they will. Obviously, England up first. It's going to be a tough opener. England, I think, will be delighted that they've got Ireland first.
Before we build up ahead of steam?
Before they build up ahead of steam, and just the first game coming together. I think England are looking in decent enough shape in terms of injuries, and in the way that they probably going to come stacked with a pretty physical and powerful team, you know.
There's been hype before around a World Cup year, on the back of a pretty good Six Nations on a World Cup year as well. How easy is it for that hype to penetrate the camp?
Look, it'll be in everyone's minds, but Six Nations is, you know, one of the best competitions to play in, and you know, you get limited time, and there's 5 games there. Guys will be focused on these 5 games. Yes, there's a bigger picture down the line, but what will help guys will get an opportunity to play in this. They will want to be on that plane. You know, they won't want to mess up any opportunities of putting in decent performances, and you know, everyone's fighting for places, and that is the beauty with the Irish squad these days. You've got 40 guys who will look at themselves and say, do you know what, I'm in contention for starting places or places on the bench. So from that point of view, guys will be committed that whoever gets an opportunity in the Six Nations will be out to win it, and be out to win another Grand Slam. You know, the tags of Irish teams being underdogs and favouring that tag is long gone. By winning, you know, beating the All Blacks and winning Grand Slams, that's long gone. You've got to have that favourites tag, and you've got to carry that with pride, and you've got to carry that into a huge year. So it's a massive year that I would be very disappointed if anyone has sights on a World Cup before they compete in the Six Nations.
There's all these questionnaires that you guys get asked, you know, as part of sponsorship deals and all that kind of stuff. You know, to get the players in, run through a bunch of questions, and generally one of those questions is like, who would you bring to, you know, name 4 people for a dinner party. You've already had dinner with Kanye West, so it's kind of like, how do you answer that question now? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I've already beaten it.
This was before he married Kim Kardashian, so if he was married to her at the time, she wouldn't have been a bad addition to the, to the table. Yeah. It was quite a surreal experience in meeting him. It was a table of 5 of us chatting about all sorts, just sitting back and enjoying the chat. He was coming out with all sorts of things that can't be repeated on air.
Can any of it be repeated?
Absolutely none of it. Absolutely none of it. The way he was going on, talking about women, talking about everything, and it was just, yeah.
Where was this?
This was in Cork. He was playing in Cork a few years ago, and yeah, I was asked to kind of recommend a place to go and eat, and a few of his buddies came along, and they just wanted chicken, and we went for chicken inside in Cork. It was just the most surreal experience ever. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
And is he cool, or is he?
He's very weird. He's very weird. He would just come out with random things and talking about women, talking about his own music and how he doesn't really like the music industry, and he's just in it because he's an artist and has no respect for a lot of people that he has worked with. And yeah.
Was he interested in you at all? Was he asking any questions about what you do?
He had asked a few questions about rugby, and but it was just kind of out of politeness, really, more than anything. Yeah, so it was just like I said, a very surreal experience, and quite a strange individual, which I think a lot of people are probably aware of from things he comes out with on Instagram and Twitter, and befriending Donald Trump, and
yeah. Was there a Lady Gaga at dinner as well? Was there?
There was a couple of meetings with Lady Gaga as well. There were
just the music industry connect. Is it like a secret lifestyle, you know?
Music and dancing are my 2 things that I've very little skill in it, but I've met a few people, as a few guys have. But Lady Gaga, again, another individual. She was actually a lot more interested in rugby, because she used to go out with a rugby player in the States, and she was very keen to chat about rugby. I've met her a few times, and gave her an Irish number 9 jersey that she wore for a gig in Cork at one stage. So yeah, some interesting people along the way.
So can we expect some Gaga Kanye mashup for to finish off as your grand finale?
Yeah, you never know. I could be dancing to a little number, all right, that they might produce. So you never know. I'm looking for inspiration from all sides on this, and any moves or any inspiration I can get would be a big help.
Well, listen, best of luck. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
Just a reminder that leading figures from across Irish technology, social innovation, music, sport and business will come together for the AIB Future Sparks Festival 2019. Now in its second year, over 7,500 senior level students will descend upon the RDS on the 14th of March for an event that will bring together business leaders and young entrepreneurs to inspire students and show them the power of their potential. Peter Stringer will be there. Thanks a million for coming into us. That's our lot for you this morning. Monday Night Rugby live around about 5 o'clock this evening on all our social channels, and of course the football show, and a look back at all the weekend's GA action coming up at 7 o'clock with Joe and the lads tonight. Good luck.